Namaste, Rooted Studio Yogis. We've got an event coming up this weekend, Chalk and Cheese. So that's going to be going on Saturday, August 14th in the city park. And so basically artists will come down, and when I say artists, I mean all of you also will come down and check out the artwork that's being created on the sidewalk. Or of course, people can also make art on the sidewalk. It's a family event. I know you can't see everything on here, but basically it starts at 8 a.m. Where you'll have the artists check in. There'll be from 4 to 5 p.m. People are going to be voting on the piece of art in City Park. And then 5:30 p.m. there'll be the awards, and then from 5 to 7 p.m. live music. So it sounds like it'll be a really fun event. And Rooted Studio will be there. We're actually going to be doing some free classes from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock that day. And we're going to be doing them on half-hour intervals. So the first class will be at 12 o'clock from 12 to 12:30. The next class will be from 12:30 to 1 to 1:30, and so on and so forth. So short little yoga intervals, and you can actually come and go as you please at any time during those intervals. But basically, that's what we're planning, starting at the beginning and the end of those half-hour intervals. So a little bit of a free yoga class if you're interested. If you're coming down to the Chalk and Cheese, or you can come down for the free yoga and then go see what the artwork looks like. So up to you, make a day of it. So anyway, but I also want to do a little bit of a free class right now, so that if you're watching this, you don't just get the promo, you also can potentially do a little yoga yourself. So if you want to just hit pause and you get yourself set up for that, you certainly may. So we'll begin, as we usually do in my classes, in constructive rest position. So that will be laying on your back with your knees bent and your feet flat on the ground, like this. I like to keep my arms out of my sides at about 45 degrees, but you don't have to be too picky about that. You can also have them on your belly if you like to feel the sensation of your belly rising and falling as you breathe. Some people even go overhead if you have very loose shoulders, and this feels nice. So just taking whatever position you want with your arms. Knees stay a little bit bent with about hip width apart, so that they're not collapsing together or falling apart. And in constructive rest position, it's very supportive for being aware of your connection to the ground beneath you. So you might start by feeling the soles of your feet on the ground, and the back of your pelvis, your lower back, mid back, upper back, shoulder blades, and arms. Feeling the back of your skull supported by the ground. You can relax the roof of your mouth to relax your jaw and facial muscles. Belly rises and falls as you breathe. And seeing if you can allow your belly to sink with each out breath. Letting your ribs come together with each out breath. And allowing your belly to fall with your out breath is not something that will require any physical effort. This is actually kind of a non-effort. It is an attempt to cease using effort. In alignment yoga, we have a term, a concept called committing to an exhale, which is to say we don't hold anything back when we breathe out. We just let gravity help do the work. The sound of the bell reminds us that we are here and now in this moment, in this place. Wherever this place is, this is where we are. Our mind is here. Our body is here. Taking a deeper in-breath and a longer, slower out-breath at your own pace. And you can do two of them if you want. Opening your eyes afterwards with a soft gaze if they're closed. Drawing your knees up toward your chest with your hands and rolling over to your side, probably the side facing your screen. Use your hands to push up to a seated position. Now here's another part. You might pause the video depending on what your experience is in doing footwork. If you haven't done footwork with me before, you should probably get yourself a chair or even a high cushion that really lets you get your hips up off the ground. And then just find yourself either in this seated position where you can sit up straight, or you could also, if you are familiar with footwork, you can lay in constructive rest and do the work from there. I realize I need to adjust my camera just a little bit so that I can see my feet a little bit better, just a little adjustment. Maybe I'll move myself back a little too. Okay, so we'll start with a little bit of front to back movement with our feet. So that front to back movement will be lifting the heel about an inch, doesn't have to lift very high. Sitting down the heel, lifting and spreading the toes. Letting the toes come down wide, lifting the heel. Letting the heel come down and lifting and spreading the toes. And we can just kind of rock back and forth. As we rock, we're going to maintain this contact with the ground most of the time with two parts of our foot. There's going to be a little part in between this rocking where you might have just one part of the foot on the ground, maybe just the metatarsals. But then it's going to be toes and metatarsals, or metatarsals and heel. Metatarsals, by the way, are these kind of knuckles that are at the very base of your toes. That's what I mean when I say that anyway. I guess the metatarsals are actually longer than that, but I'm not an anatomist. I just mean to try to be consistent with whatever term I'm using. And so we just keep doing that. This is the sort of the front view. And maybe you have some toes that are a little sticky. Like for me, my pinky toe on this side, yoga right, tends to have some trouble lifting up. So we've done our front to back movement. We'll do a little bit of side to side movement. So for this, again, you want to be able to sit up straight. Ideally, if you haven't done this before, you want to be able to see your toes, especially with this one. You're gonna lift the inside edge and then lift the outside edge. And you might be thinking, well, this is easy. I can lift the inside and outside edge of my toe. But if you're doing this, if you're moving your knee side to side or even a little bit, what you're actually doing is you're moving from the thigh, from the hip joint. So the hip joint is moving your thigh. So see if it's possible to keep your knees from moving as you lift the inside edge of your foot and then lift the outside edge. Yeah, and it's tough at first. Like you can see that my knees are clearly moving a little bit. I'm really trying to keep them from moving though. And that's the ideal, trying to really do your best. And sometimes you'll put a finger on them or they put hands on them. A really good thing to do is to have a block in the middle if you have a block at home or any kind of object about that size where you can put it between your knees, and that way it keeps your knees from going out because the block will drop, and it keeps your knees from going in because there's a block there. All right. So one of the things that you might notice is that your hands sometimes want to help. Maybe your pinky moves with your hands. You ever wonder why that is? Why you try to move your feet, your hands want to move? Like for instance, if I'm really spreading out my toes, sometimes my fingers want to spread out too, especially if I'm standing up and doing this. Like my pinky right now is kind of wiggling out. Well, I don't have a good answer for you. But one of the theories, and we can go ahead and stop this movement, one of the theories about that's beginning to be more and more explored in body science, you know, the science of the human anatomy, is this idea of the fascia or the fascia, depending on how you pronounce it. You say potato, I say potato, but it's this interstitial tissue that goes through your entire body. And when I say it goes through your entire body, from what we understand, it really does. It connects through, it goes through the muscles, it goes around the muscles, it goes around the organs, it goes basically throughout the entire body. And for a long time, scientists thought this stuff was basically packing peanuts. They thought it's like stuff that just kind of fills out the extra space, and that and they didn't really take much time to study it other than just to say, oh, yep, it's here, okay, toss it out. When they were doing when they were looking at a part of the human anatomy, they would just cut that away and kind of toss it. But we're learning that the fascia maybe has a much bigger role than originally was thought. One of the things that it does is that it allows muscles to glide and slide by each other. But it actually has sort of three different functions. I won't necessarily go into all of them today because I'm not an anatomist, but one of them is that slide and glide. They allow things to move. Another is that it actually has a sensory function, which is to say it connects through your nerves and helps, some people believe it helps with your interoception, your awareness of what's going on inside your body, and your proprioception, your ability to know where your body is in space. And third, it's also sort of something that does sort of absorb impact, and that does protect things, much like the packing peanut idea. So we're going to be working with our fascia today, and fascia goes through all these different lines or patterns in the body that link different sets of muscles together. So I was talking about the pinky, you know, the foot and the hand. Well, the fascia, there's a fascia line that goes all the way from, I'll move my pillow out of the way, you can go ahead and come to a standing position as well. There's a fascia line that goes all the way from the pinky toe up the side of the body, the side of the leg, side of the torso, up the arm, all the way to the pinky. So we'll be playing with that fascia line today. And it is something that has to do with our ability for our muscles to move and to slide and glide, and if it has something to do with our proprioception, our connection to body and space. that means it probably has a lot of, it's probably a helpful thing to sort of be aware of it and to get it moving and to get some flow going through it. So, and I know it's kind of a woo-woo term, but basically thinking about it as it's just like everything else in the body, that when you cease to move it, it tends to be less prioritized by our body. Our body decides, well, this muscle isn't moving, it doesn't need to be strong or flexible. Or this bone isn't carrying much weight, so it doesn't have to be strong. So I would think that based on that theory, that if fascia is not used, that it will cease to be prioritized by the body as well and not do what it's supposed to do. So we're going to think about that idea of sliding and gliding today, getting these systems of fascia to be sliding and gliding. So let's start by coming up into a mountain position. And just think about that line from the pinky toe down here, all the way up the side of the body, up the arm. We'll just start with some of our foot flexion stuff that we were just doing. In fact, I'm going to step a little bit wider apart. Let's step a little bit wider, slightly wider than shoulder width, not a super, well, for me, I guess this is about shoulder width, but shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width apart. And let's just do that flexion, that foot flexion stuff we were doing before. So lifting the heel up off the ground, which sends us over to one direction or the other. So as we lift the yoga left foot or the yoga right foot, it sends us in the opposite direction. When I say lift the foot, I guess I should really say push with the foot. So think about pushing down with your toes and your metatarsals, that transverse arch of your foot right here, right below the toes. Push down with those to send your weight over to one side or the other. So don't just lean, but use your feet to push you over. So as you do this, kind of getting two different functions of the side fascia working. So one of the functions is putting the muscles in extension as you push. And the other one is kind of using a little bit of a contraction. As this side pushes, the other side has to absorb and hold us steady. Feel that on the side of your leg. Feel that all the way down to the pinky toe and the ankle. Shifting slowly side to side. Doesn't seem like we're doing very much right now, and I guess we're not, other than just telling our mind to be aware of that connection. Next, we'll add some arm movement to this. So this is just like sun salutation arms. So the arm reaches up, palm facing in, the thumb points back behind you a little bit. So as you switch your weight over to your right side, right arm reaches up, spirals a little bit, thumb points back behind you. And think about that connection all the way from your pinky toe to your pinky finger. See if you can feel a little bit of a pull at the pinky finger as you shift your weight over and reach up. Feel that pull, that little tightness. You might even feel a little bit of tingling if you've got some nerve binding or some nerve challenges. I know that Tina has got a little bit of something she's been working with her nerves, where she can sometimes get a little tingling with some of these real extreme reaches. Okay, and this could be the last one. So we'll do this one more time on each side. Okay, great. So we're going to come down to the ground next and explore some of this movement from a different position. So first of all, we're going to lay down in such a way that our body is relatively straight. I'm going to try to check myself on this because a lot of times I tend to put my ankles back behind my hips. We don't want to look like a banana. We want to kind of look like a stick. So you got your hips, ankles, ears, all in line. We're going to be doing some versions of leg raises. Now, For a greater challenge, you might have your hand out like this, karate chopping, kind of like almost like we're doing that motion we were doing before, we were doing sun arms. If that's a little too tough, then kind of just folding your arm in like that is fine too. And with the other hand, either reaching that up towards the ceiling, which is I guess the more challenging thing, or if you need it here, that's fine too, because the arms are not like the main part of this movement. So if you need a little extra support with your arms, then use it. But if you want a greater challenge, go ahead and extend your arms out like so. So the next thing we'll do is think about lifting kind of the side body on the lower part on the left side. So contracting these muscles to kind of, see if I can show this, lift the torso up off the ground a little bit. And this may not get your torso off the ground completely, but you'll feel a little bit less pressure here, right in this kind of curve here. Just getting those muscles firing on the lower side. So those muscles are firm, and then lifting and lowering the top leg, yoga right leg. Toes point forward, so your foot's just kind of gently flexed, not super flexed, but just kind of gently flexed so the toes aren't pointing down. Now, as we do this, we're working with the muscles on this side fascia line, lifting and lowering. The muscles are gliding past the other tissues, the skin, the nerves, the veins. Everything is kind of having to move and adjust. And we've got this nice and long extension here along the ground maybe. And even if we don't, we're at least activating our side body here. And this can be the last of those lifts. Then we're gonna do something a little more challenging, which is to lift and keep the right leg in the air, and then see if we can lift the left leg up as well, and let the left leg come down. So ideally you wanna point those toes forward too. That's a bit tougher. You can see I'm wobbling a little bit now. Keep active right here in the mid body. If you need to change to supporting here, that's fine. This is mostly about the legs. All right, and then that can be the last of those movements. So we'll go ahead and switch over to the other side. So again, you're gonna have kind of a karate chop on the ground like this, in a way that feels good. If that's a little more challenging, again, you can do other things with your hands if you need to. Trying to keep our ears lined up with our hips, lined up with our ankles. I realize my ankles are actually a little bit back, so I have to adjust myself there. And then we're going to use a little bit of muscular integrity on the right side, right lower side of our belly. And that's going to look like that. I don't know if you can really appreciate that. It's a very small movement, but you'll feel it. You'll feel these muscles get firm. Just kind of press in with your fingers, you'll feel those muscles. All right, the other hand reaches up, and then we'll go ahead and lift and lower our yoga left leg. Keeping these external muscles strong as we do so. Keeping the left foot just slightly flexed so the toes are pointing forward. Like all those muscles slide past the other tissue, working through our fascia. Some scientists are even beginning to theorize the idea of an interstitium, they call it, which is the sort of thinking about it as a separate connective tissue, other than the blood and and whatnot, blood and skin, and thinking of the fascia as being part of something called the interstitium, which connects all these different parts of the body. This time we'll leave our left leg up and then lift the right leg. It's a little tougher on this side for me. So just lifting the right leg up, keeping the left leg lifted as you lift and lower the right leg, keeping toes forward. Keeping the lower part, the outside of your belly connected or active. And that could be the last one there. You can let the arms come down and go ahead and push up to seated. And then from seated, we'll transition back to our our constructive rest position. So if you're like me, you can already feel this line down the side of the body, because we're thinking about this now. We're using those muscles. You can feel that set of muscles, that chain of muscles that goes down the sides of the legs, the ankles, to the hips, maybe even down to the pinky toes. So perhaps you can even feel this up the body. So we'll do a version of a half bridge lift, stepping your feet about 2 to 3 inches from the back of your pelvis. And then just kind of gently draw your shoulder blades in towards each other, just a little bit to open up the front of your chest a bit. And then thinking about the external, that outside of the legs as you do a regular lift, just feeling how those muscles are involved, feeling how that fascia line is involved. Now, usually when we're doing a movement like this is primarily working something like glutes, hamstring, lower back. And it is definitely doing those things, and there's fascia involved there too. But just thinking about how something we usually don't associate with this movement, that lateral side of the body is involved as well. How the muscles and tissues have to slide and glide and adjust for this kind of movement. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about fascia, there is a good SCI show, that's SCI show, miniature talk on it, real short little explanation of what scientists have been looking at lately. All right, and that can be the last of these lifts. And then to the next set of lifts, we might add a little bit of extra challenge, extending our arms overhead. And with our arms, we're going to be doing this movement, reaching back. And this is not a stretch. This is actually more of a strengthening thing. So we're just going to reach back and stop them. I mean, we could reach back and touch the ground, but we're going to stop them at about 45 degrees from the ground, maybe even a little less. And we're going to do this as we're lifting the pelvis. So lifting the pelvis, arms reach back, pelvis comes down, arms come down. Thinking about that lateral line, thinking about the connection in the pinkies, feeling how the pinky finger feels. See if you can feel that little tug, that little stretch that we were feeling before. See if you can feel that down the arm, maybe even down to the armpit, maybe even down the sides of your body, down to your hips, knees, and pinky toe. Maybe you don't feel it all the way down there, but you'll probably feel it in your pinky finger, just a little bit of a tug. It might even feel just a tiny bit warm. Just a tiny bit, and that's kind of the nerves, the interstitium, the fascia, moving to adjust as we lengthen. Well, lengthen, I guess, is the wrong word, but as we stretch our arms up overhead, changing position, changing the orientation of skin to bone to muscle. The interstitium, the fascia have to help adjust to that, to glide along with that, help those muscles glide past each other without creating friction, without creating undue stress on the body. And that could be the last one of those, and just letting your hands come down to your sides, taking a breath or two here. Draw both knees up towards your chest, roll over to your right side, use your hands to push up, to a seated position, and then go ahead and come up to standing. Okay. So from a standing position, stand a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. From this position, rotate on the heel. Oh, by the way, I should point this out. When I do this, I like to bend my other knee. This is a Tai Chi thing. You bend it in line with your toes, and then rotate on the heel. When your left toe is off this direction, weights on this foot to rotate on the ball, the back foot to turn that out a little bit. So we're kind of in that bow stance or that warrior two stance. We'll just warm up the legs a little bit, bending and straightening the knee. Making sure you're keeping your knee right over the center of your foot. If you could draw a line down, it should go right down the center of your foot. You don't want it to creep inward, which is something that can happen, especially if we think about turning our hips out too much. The knee can sometimes fall along if you don't consciously keep it pushed out. All right, we'll make this the final bend, and we'll keep this front knee bent. And then tipping from the side, we're going to take our torso into this diagonal line. Now you can do this here with your hand on your knee, or maybe if you want to get really deep down, you can do it like this. But still, try to keep your torso in line with your back leg. I had to kind of shuffle my back leg out to do it. So if you want to do it this way, you want to get down real low, then you're going to have a little more of a load in your thigh. And then go ahead and sweep your arm up alongside your body and reach out and really extend. See how I just kind of create a little gap here? The shirt's not quite long enough. And then reach down with your back toes, the back side of your back. Remember how we were doing that side-to-side foot thing? Push down with the back edge of your back foot. Reach up with your pinkies. So you're stretching all the way from the pinky finger up here, this hand up here, down to the pinky finger down there, or the pinky toe, I should say. Now, you can also do this like that. Same thing. See how I can reach a little farther that way. Don't want my shoulder to collapse. I'm going to let that come down. And then let's go ahead and come back up. Turning right toes back forward, pivoting on the ball of the left foot, point those toes back forward, bending into the left foot to pivot on the heel of the right foot, shifting weight to the right foot to pivot the left foot. Now this may be too wide of a stance. You go ahead and adjust as you wish. But we're going to try to bring our torso into a diagonal line in line with our back leg, adjusting as necessary. And then swinging the arm up to continue that line. So this line goes all the way from the pinky down to the outside edge of the back foot, which we're gently pushing into the ground as we reach extra far with this arm, reaching that pinky as the thumb points back behind us, feeling that fascia line all the way from the pinky finger down to the pinky toe, pressing down with the pinky toe, reaching up with the pinky finger. That whole line, you can maybe feel it on the side of your body, side of your leg and your hip. See where you can feel that as you breathe. Raising your top arm up, let's go ahead and push back up. And then we can go ahead and step our feet back together. Wonderful stuff, just opening up this side body. All these nice lymph nodes and everything that helps us to move fluid around through our body, while keeping things balanced and healthy. All right, so we'll do a little bit of a sun salutation arm flow. So we'll start with hands going down and back, arms coming up to shoulder level, arms going up overhead. And then back down to shoulder level, and back down behind the body. And we'll connect this with breath. With the in breath, arms come up to shoulder level. With the out breath, reaching up overhead. This is contrary to usual yoga breathing. With the in breath, down to shoulder level. With the out breath, down and back. Because when we do it this way, in breath up to shoulder level, out breath reaching up overhead. When we do it this way, we get the rib cage to go down as the arms are going up, which creates a little bit of stretch there. With the in-breath, shoulder level. With the out-breath, down and back, which of course creates more of that need to slide and glide. Breathing in, breathing out. This movement is really healthy. The body needs to move. And this time we come all the way up. First we'll start at the chest level or shoulder level. We're going to stop up at the top. So stopping up at the top. Just going to keep both of our feet nice and grounded. And really going to reach down with the left foot, outside edge of the left foot as we tilt over to the right side. So in other words, don't let the left foot come off the ground. Keep it down. Keep it reaching down as we do a little curve to the right side. Working through the fascia there. We'll do the same thing to the other side, keeping the opposite foot, the right foot, grounded down to the outside edge of the foot as we tilt over to the left side. And then coming back up, and then we'll just kind of cycle back and forth between those two sides. Arms are going to get a little tired. Kind of lean that way, keep your connection to the ground to the other foot. And we're going to lean the hips the other way. So we do that, keeping the connection on the outside edge, the other foot. Just a couple more times. One more time this way. And then one more time the other way. And then back to the center. And with the out breath, hands go down and back. With the in breath, palms together, shoulder level. And then we can let our hands come down. Yeah, just keeping the arms up that long can be a nice exercise, actually. Kind of a good toning and endurance muscle thing. Okay, so just feeling the lateral side of our body. Maybe we even feel it in our neck. Feeling this fascia line, especially the one that goes up the arm, down to the leg. So we're going to stand a little bit wider than shoulder width apart to this next one. Gonna come down in sort of a goddess pose. So goddess pose has us bending our knees like so they're following the lines of our toes, following the lines of our feet, and our torso remains relatively upright as we do that. Maybe the arms take kind of a goalpost like this. This is another really good lateral side of the body type movement. You can feel that little tug, especially in the fingers. But maybe you can even feel it on the underside of your arm, the under back side of the arm, going down like that. Feel that, feel that. Maybe turn the hands a little bit, see how that affects things. Okay, we'll place both our hands on our knees, tip forward from the waist a little bit. So usually in goddess we're upright. This time we're going to tip forward, almost like we're doing a squat. And we're going to go ahead and turn over to the right side. Just a little twist here. Keeping the left foot connected to the ground all the way to the toe. And then turning the other way. So this is actually a qigong movement. The dragon wags its tail. And then turning back the other way. Now sometimes in qigong you'll see people almost lift the edge of their foot off the ground. For this we're going to keep our foot down. We might twist a little bit to let our left shoulder come down as our right shoulder comes up a little bit, just a little bit. Coming back to the center, turning the other way. Letting the right shoulder come down a little bit. Left shoulder go up. And then back to the center. And from the central position, we'll go ahead and stand upright, turn the toes back to the center. And in fact, we'll even turn our toes inward a little bit. From this inward position, with the in-breath, raising arms up overhead. With the out-breath, tipping forward from the waist to touch down and letting your head hang. And then go ahead and heel toe your feet in so they're about hip width apart, and come down to some version of a squat. However we're going to get there, we're eventually going to get here to the ground. And from the ground, go ahead and take a tabletop position. Kind of think a little bit about the breath and how the breath can be instrumental, can be helpful in creating some of this slide and glide, because of course, when the lungs expand and contract, the fascia are also involved with that because it makes the bones move, it makes the muscles move in the body. You can see that when people breathe, especially when they breathe deeply. So we'll do a little bit of cat-cow, breathing out as we round up into cat, breathing in as we go into cow. Just doing this at your own pace, breathing out, up into cat, breathing in with cow, and then coming back to a tabletop position. Now, normally with cat-cow, we do this kind of rounding this way and then rounding that way, sort of front to back. You can also do a little bit of side-to-side rounding, which is to say, bring left shoulder towards left hip, bring left hip towards left shoulder, and look over the left side. Bring right shoulder toward right hip, look toward the right side. Now, how do you breathe with this? Breathe in as you go neutral. Breathe out as you go to the side. Breathe in, neutral tabletop. Breathe out as you go to the other side. This actually mirrors another Qigong principle, is that as you turn to your left, you breathe out, turn to the center, breathe in. And this next time we turn, let's say, toward the camera, so that you are looking at the camera, looking at the screen. You're going to keep yourself contracted on one side and open on the other side. And as you breathe, really think about breathing into the ribs on the open side. The contracted side is not going to have much room to breathe into. So breathe into the open side. Really think about, as you breathe, expanding those ribs. One more good breath in and out. And then coming back to neutral. And then bending the other way, curving the other way. And feel the opposite ribs with each in-breath. Really think about expanding those ribs with the in-breath. Letting those intercostal muscles between the ribs slide and glide. Letting the bones and organs slide and glide. Creating circulation and movement in the torso. And then one more good breath, and we'll come back to our tabletop position. And from the tabletop position, pivoting on your, well, whichever foot it is, I guess I don't know which way you're facing, but pivot in such a way where if you turned that way, you're going to still see the screen. So turn your foot in the opposite direction of the screen, and then step over like so, so you're in side plank. So this is a side plank position. From this side plank position, reaching the top arm overhead and curving it, and then coming back to overhead. So reaching over top, curving, overhead, curving. And as you do this movement, you'll feel Just that little tug, that little pull from the pinky, maybe even the outside of the arm. And then we'll go ahead and come down to tabletop again. So your knees are right behind your hands, like they're on two parallel skis. Then we're going to turn out the other foot and come into a side angle on this side. And begin this kind of a little bit of a rainbow-like motion with the hand, making an arch, making an arc. And I've noticed that what I'm doing too is I'm almost bowing my spine a little bit to create that movement. And this could be the last one. We'll go ahead and come back to our tabletop position. We'll do one more thing from that basic concept of the type of movement. So we'll turn out the other foot so that you're facing toward the camera. And then go ahead and come upright. So your torso is upright. And then reaching this hand down the thigh as far as it will reasonably go. Maybe you can get to your ankle. The other arm reaches up overhead. And then bringing that one back down. Go back into tabletop. And then pivoting on the other knee. Coming back up. Coming upright. Reaching over here. Maybe you touch the top of the thigh or the calf. Maybe you go a little farther down. Just finding a place where it feels like not too extreme of a stretch, but that you're getting some sensation there. This is sometimes called gate pose. Some versions of it would have you touch down like that. This version, we're going to keep our arm up. And then let's go ahead and come back down to tabletop. And from tabletop, let's come down to prone mountain. Bring your chest down to the ground. Nose points down at the ground. Your nose is just going to hover just a little bit off the ground. Hands are down by your ribs or kind of by your armpits. About heart level, depending on how you think of it. When you're ready with an out breath, bending between your shoulder blades to lift your head up off the ground. And then we might do a little bit with the sides of the neck, turning over to the right side to look behind you, to stretch the left side of the neck a little bit. And looking back, forward, turning to the right side. Or sorry, the left side, to stretch the right side of the neck. And coming back. And then go ahead and push up and back to child pose. Folding your torso over your knees, letting your arms reach out in front of you. Coming up to kind of tabletop, stepping your knees apart so that they're about the width of your mat, maybe shorter, maybe longer, depending on your body. Touching your big toes together in the back, settling back into an alternate version of child, but this time you're going to keep the head up, arms extended out. Take your left hand and pass it underneath so that you bring your left shoulder toward the ground. And I'm kind of looking that direction too. I'm looking over to my right side. I can even maybe look up toward the ceiling a little bit to continue that twist up the spine. I like this version to thread the needle a little bit better than some I've seen because I think it keeps the pelvis a little more stable, less likely to irritate the SI joint or the lower back. Coming back to the sort of modified child pose, and then taking the right arm and slipping it underneath the left to lower the right shoulder down to the ground. And again, we might look up toward the ceiling, maybe just to continue that stretch up the spine. And then go ahead and come back to the child pose you were in before. And from here, maybe you come up to a seated position, crisscross applesauce, or perhaps half lotus, if that feels comfortable, if you're not getting too much of a grab in your hips. And actually, sometimes one way to sort of avoid that feeling of gripping in the hips is to elevate your hips a little bit above your knees. So you could use a meditation cushion or a seat chair, bolster, whatever you've got that you can sit on. It just kind of helps your hips be elevated a little higher than your knees. And that makes that a lot more, for some people, that makes it a lot more comfortable. Once we get here, just going to kind of sit upright. Take your left hand, cross over to your right thigh, and your right hand just a little bit behind you. Sit up straight, and then turning over your right shoulder. Continue to breathe into your ribs. Breathing into the right ribs, expanding them out. And then turning back to the center, taking right over to the left thigh or left knee, keeping upright, turning over to the left side. And with each in-breath, expanding the left ribs. And then turning back to the center again. And just taking some breaths here in a seated position. Finding a comfortable seated position. And I encourage you to end your practice this way today, with a seated position. If you know that a seated position isn't going to be feasible for the full 8-ish minutes, then maybe you hold it for a couple minutes and then go down to Shavasana or to constructive rest position or legs up the wall. If you're unfamiliar with constructive rest, that's what we started our practice with, laying on our back with our knees bent, feet flat on the ground. Shavasana is just laying flat on the ground with your arms and your legs extended out. And legs up the wall. You bring your hip right up next to the wall, kind of the side divider right next to the wall. And then you roll onto your back and send your legs kind of up the wall so that your legs kind of rest on the wall. Or you can remain seated. Just remaining seated for as long as you want to, perhaps for the entire Shavasana, or I guess I should call it meditation, because we aren't necessarily taking Shavasana. And as you breathe, whichever position you're in, as you breathe, think about that sideline of the body. See if you can trace it with your attention, with your mind. From the pinky toe, down the side edge of the foot, the side of the calf, of the lower leg, up the side of the thigh, through the medial glutes, the side muscles in the hips, up the side of the rib cage, the outside of the armpit, up kind of the outside of the tricep, down the lower side of your forearm to your pinky. If you feel it on one side, maybe you try to feel it on the other side, starting with the pinky toe, moving out to the outside edge of the foot, up the lower leg, up the side of the thigh, up the left ribs, the outside of the shoulder blade, the back of the tricep, the underside of the forearm to the pinky. Now, as I said earlier, I am not an anatomist, I can't even say the word. I am not somebody who studies anatomy as closely as others do. So if I've said anything incorrect, I apologize, but I can feel it in my body. I can feel that line, and maybe my body is entirely different than yours. Maybe the way I feel things is different than yours, the way you do. But I think if you feel any of those things, any of those places in the body, then we've communicated in that way. I've been able to confer something to you that I have learned in my practice and studying the teachers that founded my school. If you didn't feel that today, that's okay too, because we've moved our bodies, and when we exercise and move our bodies, as long as it's done in a way that's win-win, that's not going to cause any negatives, so that every part of our body gets some part of that benefit, or at least doesn't get harmed. And we're better off than when we started. If you'd like to follow me in a little bit of pranayama, you may. Otherwise, you can remain breathing naturally, feeling your connection to the ground, allowing your belly to sink with each out breath, and relaxing your jaw. If you'd like to follow me through pranayama, you certainly can do that, and just continue to do so, and unless you begin to feel a little lightheaded, or your skin may feel dry, your eyes may feel dry. That's just an indication that you need to stop. You're doing a little too much. We won't really do pranayama for very long, so it's unlikely that will happen. We'll do a little bit of three-part breathing. So for three-part breathing, we begin by imagining that in our belly, we have a balloon. And then with each in-breath, we seek to fill that balloon to its fullest. With the out-breath, release that air. So just doing this at the pace and length of your breath, filling your belly and then letting the air out. Well, this is diaphragmic breathing, which is great in and of itself. Feels comfortable to keep doing that, you can keep doing that. If you going to expand this to 3-part breathing. Mentioned there's also a balloon in your chest, and that after you get done filling the balloon of your belly, you fill the balloon of your chest. Before letting all the air out. That goes in with belly and with chest, all the air out. And maybe we do one more cycle of 3-part breathing. Before we return to authentic breathing, just letting our belly sink with each out breath. Or if you're sitting upright, you might think about it as allowing your shoulders to dip slightly with your out breath and lift slightly with your in breath. Yes, that will count as the first ring. I'll do 2 more. Taking a deeper in breath and a longer, slower out breath. You can open your eyes with a soft gaze if they're closed and begin to stir. And drawing your knees up towards your chest with your hands, you can roll over to your right side, using your hands to push up to a seated position when you're ready. And I'll invite you to join me in one last breath for this class. With the in-breath, we'll raise our arms up. With the out-breath, palms come together to the chest. I bow to you. Namaste. And I hope to see you at Chalk and Cheese Fest. We'll be having our yoga session inside of the Roundtree Gallery, upstairs in the Roundtree Gallery, which is where we now house Rooted Studio, if you weren't aware. So those will be starting at 12 o'clock on Saturday, this Saturday, the 14th, and continuing till about 4 o'clock. So thanks again. Namaste.